Hello and welcome to the Tech on Toast podcast. My name's Chris Fletcher and this is season 12. Tech on Toast podcast is serving up fresh chats with the sharpest minds in hospitality and tech. If you're looking to level up your ops, streamline your service, or just sprinkle a little tech magic into your business, you've come to the right place. And guess what? Our partners Lightspeed are back this season to look after us. They're the EPOS and payments platform helping over 165,000 businesses. Businesses such as Big Mama, Mildred's, Mallow, and Cubit House. They'll help you scale at, you guessed it, the speed of light. See what I did there? With real-time insights, faster transactions, and slick integrations with people like OpenTable, Xero, Muse, and many more, Lightspeed's unified platform is built to boost your performance and turn your tables quicker than you can say flat white, extra hot. So, if you need fast funding, check out Lightspeed Capital. No hidden fees, no interest charges, just smart support when you need it. If you're curious about all of this, just head over to lightspeed.co.uk/tech-on-toast and book yourself a free demo. You won't regret it. Now, enough of that. Ready for the next episode? Let's go. Welcome to the next episode of the Tech on Toast podcast, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Archie Heaton, Head of Commercial at Level and Branded. Hello, mate. How are you?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Got caught in a downpour on the way here, but very
I know,
London.
what's going on? We're both from I'm originally from Liverpool, right? And you've definitely got a northern accent.
Manchester,
Yeah, there you go. So the Northwest here representing, and it always rains at home and never in London, so I don't know what's happened today.
Yeah, especially after the bank holiday of sunshine.
I know. Welcome to Vorbos. It's quite cool, isn't it?
Yeah, I didn't think it'd be this nice.
This is what I would call all the gear, no idea, but they actually do know what they're doing. So before we get into anything, let's learn a bit about you. Tell us, obviously you're from Manchester. Tell us a little bit about your backstory. How have you ended up at Level?
Originally from Manchester, then went to university in Birmingham, then ended up in London. So I've sort of steadily been
on your way down the country.
Yeah, I'll end up in France soon. Worked for Microsoft first out of uni for a bit, then Omnicom, the marketing group. Back to Microsoft for a bit, specifically Xbox and the sort of gaming side of things. Was doing a little bit with startups.
Back to that, but yeah.
Was doing a little bit with startups here and there, and just wanted to go full time into a startup. So that was about 3 years ago. Joined Level, probably now more of a scale up, and yeah, absolutely loved it. So probably never go back to the big sort of corporate world again. I don't think. Absolutely love it.
And just while you're there, because my son is an avid gamer, tell us what were you doing there? Xbox?
Partnerships and marketing.
Wow.
So mainly working with all the publishers. I'm actually not into games. I had an Xbox on my desk, and I'd rather do emails because I'm sad like that.
Wow.
But a lot of my friends, I got a lot of brownie points.
I was going to say, did you just gather a lot of friends at that point in your life?
Yeah.
Some of us are so shallow, aren't they? And anyone who doesn't know Level, give us your best, I suppose, pitch, or what does Level do?
Yeah, we are a financial wellbeing app that's salary linked. However, the main product we're known for is a product called On-Demand Pay. You might have heard it called Earned Wage Access. And essentially what it does is it lets your staff access their earned but as yet unpaid wages before payday. Does so in a way that doesn't impact your cash flow as the employer, and is debt-free for your staff. So the staff have a great high-quality alternative to debt if they need money and flexibility around getting some cash. But you as the employer get all these benefits that I'm sure we'll go on to discuss. Doesn't affect your cash flow. You still run payroll as normal. And I'd probably say at least a third to 40% of hospitality employers are now offering a service like this.
Yeah, I think I won't mention them, but I remember about 5 years ago, maybe I first saw this popping up, kind of thing. And there was some worry, right, also around people taking money early. Are we going to put these kids in, I suppose, more financial pain than they're already in? And I remember if I'd had this growing up in the business, it would have been a huge asset for me because I was a nightmare, right? I've spent my whole life in this industry, and you just live off what you've got, right?
Yeah. And
tips and whatnot. You kind of just survive, and then to have access early would be really useful because sometimes things just catch up on you, right? And you just need that. And what industry have you come from? Because you're kind of starting your journey in hospitality, right?
Correct. Yeah. So we have primarily been focused on other frontline industries. So a lot of care, a lot of business process outsourcing. So big call centers, things like that. A little bit of retail. So these other areas, and really now, hospitality is something we're starting to see a lot of demand for. And so we're sort of making a big push in this area, just trying to get, the brand and the name out there so people at least hear about us and know that if this is something they're looking for or they're struggling with some of the problems we can help with, that we're here and they should give us a call.
And I think it more recently, actually, because retention and attraction in hospitality has always been poor, right? It's just I'm trying to think. It's an evergreen problem, and some people blame the pandemic. Say, "Oh, it's a lot worse." When it's not. It's actually. I mean, I'm sure it is worse because of Brexit. Everything. I mean, it's a few big shocks right on top. But the reality is, as long as I've been in the industry, it's always been difficult to keep people.
Yeah.
I actually think that financial well-being is something that was overlooked for ages. Right? We just never really talked about it. As I said, when I was a kid growing up, you just didn't. It wasn't a conversation to have. Do you think that level is going to support, I suppose, attraction and retention in the industry?
Yeah, so I think firstly your point about financial well-being overlooked. I mean, for a long time now, employees have cared about your physical well-being, and then I think probably in the last 10 years, you've seen that mental well-being side of things really come in. And actually the third pillar, which is financial well-being, has been really overlooked until probably the last few years. And actually, if you think about it, right, a lot of people can support you with your mental health or your physical health. Whereas actually your financial health, your employer pays an absolutely pivotal role as most people's only or main source of income. And so it's probably, not to say the other areas aren't important, but it's probably the area of your health where actually your employer can make the biggest difference. And we've definitely seen from cost of living, COVID, a couple of these shocks now that finally employers are really starting to realise the critical role they can have in supporting that financial well-being piece.
Which is mad, right? Because I think it's pretty obvious. I think it's always been pretty obvious. It has always been an entry-level job for people, so it's low paid. And then people kind of climb the ladder within, but they don't really experience anything else, so they don't know that actually salaries over here are much better. And I think maybe, do you think it's the tech that came late rather than the or the ability to do what you're doing now, what you guys can do at level? Do you think that maybe it just wasn't a choice before, and the other options were payday loans, which were horrific?
Yeah, I think part of it is that the tech's caught up. I think part of it is a cultural mindset shift. We offer, like I'm sure we'll touch on it later, but we offer a range of benefits within our app. So we do payroll savings, budgeting tools, financial coaching, and the earned wage access on-demand pay piece is sort of the hero piece. And that really has only been enabled by the technology shift probably in the last 5 to 10 years. So people actually tracking hours on things like workforce management apps, the money movement, the faster money movement, the fact that you can actually ping money to people and they get it instantly. And so there's been these few innovations which I suppose have enabled what we do. And you're right, before the market has always been really good at going, right, if you want flexibility, we'll provide it, whether it's unarranged overdrafts, payday loans, buy now, pay later services like Klarna. If your staff want flexibility, they're getting it already. The market will provide it. They'll just do so in a slightly dodgy way that takes advantage of certain people, all very high interest, all interest that can grow and compound if you miss payments, and business models actually that rely on people missing those payments. So if your staff want flexibility, they've been getting it for years in the market. What we're saying is, why don't you provide a totally high quality alternative to that?
Right, and I think that's the bit that was missing, like you said. Those other bits were focused on, but that was the one bit that wasn't accessible or wasn't being thought of. And it's not just about the pay, is it? It's about that control and confidence in the way they spend their money. And I think that, I suppose, having confidence. My son is 18. He's working at Peter Pilgrim's. I bore everyone every week with this, but he's really financially aware because we've made sure he is. But I think this generation are almost expecting that from an employer, I suppose. And so that kind of expectation going to work for someone now must be there, right? That they want that control and confidence and that change in behaviour. And are you seeing that in real terms then when these guys are accessing these funds? Yeah,
I think these guys have grown up in a world where not only for the last 5 years do most of the NHS, most of the big hospitality guys, the big supermarkets, whether it's Tesco, Sainsbury's, Asda, they're all offering services like ours.
Yeah.
So this itself is an expectation. But just if you think slightly broader, people have grown up with Uber and gigs. People expect to be able to track everything, right? You don't wait for a taxi anymore with Uber. You follow the little icon of it coming, right? People expect to be able to track it. And we
that's
see...
just you.
Yeah,
I know, I do literally like a Monopoly
It even comes
piece.
up on my watch now. But... yeah, people like to track things, and what we see actually is a relatively large cohort of users who don't often withdraw their money early, but they use the app a lot to track their earnings and see their earnings go up. And what we've seen is, even with that cohort that don't actually withdraw their earnings very much, you still see the increase in retention, the drop in absenteeism, the increase in shift filling. And the hypothesis there, speaking to some of our employers who we work with, is that actually, you have a rubbish day of work and it feels like, right, I want to quit, or I'm going to call in sick tomorrow, or, it could be 30 days till you get paid for that shift. Whereas if you have that rubbish day at work, but then you can check the app and you see the balance has gone up £100, you sort of think, well, it makes it very tangible. You sort of think, I know it was rubbish, but I can see the reward I've got. So by closing that gap between putting in the hard yards and the hard work and actually getting rewarded for it, even if you don't withdraw it and you can just see it go up, it makes that work feel way more tangible than at the moment, which is, I've just worked my absolute butt off for 10 hours and I'm not going to get any reward or even any signal of a reward for 30 days.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely huge. And I think that's the bit about confidence, right? And that understanding that actually I've done a good job today. I've worked, especially the guys who work like in the kitchens and stuff where it's bloody hard work. It's physical, hot, horrible. But be able to sit at the end of the shift and like that real time. Because as you said, they've got it in the rest of their lives. What are some of the percentages? I saw a quote here where I'm trying to find it. 62% more. I know it's an aggregated percentage probably. Is that accurate?
Yeah, so the two big quotes we sort of have seen from our research is the first one is Capita PLC, one of the UK's biggest employers. They released this for all 40,000 of their staff. And what they saw when they did a massive data piece on their staff is the staff who were using this service, whether they were taking the money out of it very often or not, they were half as likely to turn over as the staff who didn't. And that was even more marked in that critical sort of 3-month probationary period.
Yeah.
So, and again, I think it is just that your work feels very tangible. The reward feels much more tangible for that work. And especially in that first 3-month period where, you might have moved to a new city, you've got to pay your rent up front. And then suddenly you've got 2 months rent and a house deposit up front. Then you don't get paid for the first 30 days. And so there's this enormous gap without pay right. It all feels very thankless. And that is actually a period where, and I assume this is the same with a lot of hospitality employees, where you've got sort of a massive, massive problem with turnover in that first 30 days. And actually, if you can get people to stick it past probation, they're a much stickier employee. And so across the board, we saw a 50% reduction, but it was even more marked in that sort of key probationary window.
And I think in my career, I had to move a lot, like cities a lot to get promotions. I had to kind of, if you're aggressive and you want to kind of move up the ladder, to get better, I had to move, different cities. And with that, each time became new financial pressures. Obviously the company would help you with some moving costs and whatnot, but you're always like that deposit thing when you said it, then that really shivers down my spine. No, because it's true, right? You've got I think it's like a 12-week upfront. You have to pay 3 months upfront, whatever it is, and you have all that pressure come on you, and you can't really go into work and say, "Oh, boss, I'm having a bad time," because as much as they care, they probably care less because you're working, you're getting paid for what you do. But actually, that tangible, being able to, as you say, being able to get rewarded and get it straight away, or at least plan. I think is that one of the big things that I suppose, because there's an AI tool, isn't it, on the website, like it's like a financial planning coach. Is that, how often can you see the usage on that? Do you know how much they use?
Yeah, so the usage is all trackable. I think what you see is that people just use it in totally different ways. So we have some people who just use our product to save money. Yeah. We have some people who just use the financial coach. We have some people who use a mix. Even within Earned Wage Access itself, the usage is so varied, the use cases. So we have some people who just take their overtime. So they will never touch their base hours, but every time they do overtime shift, they want to draw down that because the idea is, well, I'm doing that extra. I want that money.
My level. Excuse
me.
See what I did there?
And that's
You're welcome.
And that's where you see a massive drop off of unfilled shifts, because suddenly when you're asking someone to work some overtime or stay on a bit later, but I might not get paid for that for 20 days, no thank you. But actually we've seen up to a 62% reduction in unfilled shifts because, well, if I can, I might have to work late on a Thursday and I'm tired, but I can get that money for the Saturday. Yeah. Suddenly I'm way more likely to take that shift. And what's interesting about that is we're saying you don't have to pay a penny more, because I think there's always this focus, and rightly so, on what you earn. It's about how much are you paying, right? And obviously that's the most important part of pay. But ultimately with national insurance rises, with, the minimum wage increases, a lot of employers physically cannot afford to pay any more. And so we're saying, why not approach it from a different angle? If you can't afford to pay any more, why not look at how you pay and when you pay with a service like this, and approach it from a slightly different angle? And actually you can see the sort of benefits you would usually see with a pay rise, like that massive reduction in unfilled shifts, just because you're rewarding people so much more instantly for that work. And that is probably, in an industry like hospitality, the biggest feedback we get is just, and care as well, is that filling my shift rota is not a problem anymore.
Yeah. It's probably the holy grail, right? Making sure that everyone's serviced all the time. And it's all very well saying that, but how easy is it to, I suppose, the practicality of doing that? How disruptive? Because I always say about bringing new tech in, is it open heart surgery? Have you kind of like put a new POS in, you've got to rip everything apart, right, and kind of put it in. How practical is it installing Level, or how much work do you have to do alongside payroll, HR tech?
Yeah, it's super easy. And I know everyone says that, but it honestly is.
If you didn't, we'd be disappointed.
Our typical launch window from deciding to work with us and signing a contract to launch is 4 to 6 weeks.
Right.
So it's not sort of like ripping out your payroll system. It's not a year-long project. We work with every single payroll and workforce management system. We are agnostic. We are pre-integrated with most of them, and we have a team whose only job is to integrate with new ones, so they will integrate on request. But it really is a sort of weeks, not months type project. Like I said, totally agnostic to your systems, and we work with everyone from tiny little care businesses who do it all on spreadsheets and employ 100 people, all the way up to some of the biggest retailers in the UK who employ tens of thousands of people, and everyone in between. So we've never found a system or an employer we couldn't work with before. There's lots of ways to skin the cat, but we've never had problems.
And I suppose you mentioned before about operators being under pressure and actually finding different ways to do things. And this is more than just a perk, right? If you know what I mean. I know it is a perk, right? It's the ability to access your funds early, but it's more than that, isn't it? There's real ROI behind this.
Yeah, I think when you can see the reduction in absenteeism, the reduction in unfilled shifts, the increase in staff loyalty and staff retention, it's really easy to prove an ROI. And typically, for employers of a certain size, definitely 500 plus, this is often cost neutral from the employer side of things. And so the ROI is really stark in a situation like that. But also the sort more human side of it as well. We speak to loads of people who say, if it wasn't for this, I'd have had to take out a payday loan again, or pressure, family members who don't have the money to lend, or, probably one of our services that gets the best feedback when I speak to users is our savings product. And it's often not the people who are saving loads and loads of money. It's those people putting aside 20, 30 quid a month. Yeah. At the end of the year, they've got £200-300. And actually, sometimes these people are well into their 40s and they say, I've never had a savings pot in my whole life. And you speak to them and something crops up, the car breaks down, and for the first time in their whole life, they've got a savings pot which they can use, and they can actually deal with that financial problem themselves without going to friends and family, without taking on debt. And when you speak to them, they are probably the most passionate users, because it's so empowering. It's hard to overestimate how empowering they find that for the first time in their lives to actually have said, I had a problem and I dealt with it myself with my own savings. And there really is a flywheel to that sort of thing.
I think that is probably, out of all things you said, actually, that's probably one of the things that hit home the most, that the reality of a lot of people in their 40s and 50s now who've been working in this industry for a long time. If I'd stayed in, I'd probably be the same as where I was when I was in the industry. You hand to mouth. And it's, I'm not talking about you're living on the streets kind of thing, but you are very much living to your earnings, because that's the way you've always done. You just stretch it all the time. And I'm sure some people are saying, well, you should behave better financially. But the nature of the beast is chaos a little bit, hospitality. And sometimes that behavior creeps into other parts of your life. And I think if you can give people that stable, the confidence we mentioned before, and that ability to see where they're at, and you're right, to have a bit of a win. Just to, who cares? 100 quid, 50 quid, whatever it is, just be able to sit there and go, actually, for the first time in my life, I've actually put some money away. And most people struggle with that outside of hospitality, right? It's just one of those things. And do you think going forward, this is going to be, I think the answer is yes anyway, but do you think it's going to be a stable part of the offer as it would be?
If you look at the whole of the UK right now, you're at between 15 and 20% of all UK employers offering a service like this. You take frontline industries like hospitality, care, retail, you can easily double that. So we're already on between a third and 40% of employers in sectors like this offering this. I think either at some point this year or next year on our projections, we would expect you to cross the threshold of half. Now, you're already seeing that in some areas. So for example, in the NHS, half of all NHS employees have access to this. So you have seen that. And interestingly, it's one of the few examples where the public sector appears to have innovated faster than the private sector, which is not very common.
Do you think that was driven by the pandemic, though, potentially, that the way they were being treated or have been treated during that period of time, maybe there wasn't, and they've acted on that?
And again, they're in a very unique position where you can be the CEO of a 10,000 person NHS trust, but you have no control over what you pay your staff because that is set by the Treasury at the government level. And so it's this bizarre situation where you've got these really powerful senior people who have no control over what their staff are paid. That's the Chancellor's job. And so I think they were looking for, I might not control what they're paid, but can I innovate around the edges on when they're paid or how they're paid? So I think that may have been the driver. But I would say that, yeah, this is already in hospitality and retail and places like that close to a sort of must-have. And I think if we had this conversation in 12 months, it'd be an absolute no-brainer. But I think what we're increasingly seeing is that the time to do it, especially, look, we can implement this at any time, but especially if you are changing payroll provider or you are changing workforce management provider or you are looking at your tech stack, that is such a golden time to do this because it's such a cherry on top, easy win. And actually, when you're asking all your staff to download, say, a new workforce management app, usually that means nothing to them, right? They don't care if they get their rotas on X or Y. Whereas if you can say, look, we're moving you from X to Y, but look at, as part of that, look what you're getting. This is the give-get. We want this, but you're getting on-demand pay. It can just help be that cherry on top of actually something for the end users.
And for me, Archie, there's probably the one name that I hear that when I mentioned before about 2019, I went to an event and I sat with these people on a panel, and it was the first time I'd heard of something like this. It was WageStream, and I suppose everybody looks at that kind of the first to market as it would be. What's the difference between you guys and WageStream, or is that the best way to kind of put a comparison there so people know what you do? Yeah, is it banned?
Have you got a really good relationship with WageStream? Industry code of conduct with them. We know a few people there. We've got a perfectly good relationship with them. There is essentially, in the industry, it's only ourselves and WageStream. So we do a very similar thing, almost identical actually.
Right.
And actually, it's only in the UK, ourselves and WageStream, who can automate this, the reconciliation of this. So all of the other providers, to my knowledge, require payroll to manually deduct.
Wow.
Whereas only ourselves and WageStream have the full capability technically to automate this. And so actually on sort of accreditations and technology in the end product, ourselves and WageStream are almost identical. The real dividing line in the sand is that they also offer debt products within their app. So they offer credit cards and loans and things like that. And look, that is what some employers will want. We absolutely do not. And we know a lot of employers are a little uncomfortable with that.
Yeah, 100%.
And so we just do the on-demand pay, and then all of the other services, so the payroll savings, the financial coaching, the budgeting, all entirely free. We don't cross out anything else, and definitely not debt products. So that really is the big dividing line. If you want to automate this, you come to us on WageStream, and then on the sort of flowchart decision making, it's do you want debt products? Yes, go to WageStream. No, you go to us. It really is that simple.
And without beating WageStream at all. And it's kind of a, at the moment, I suppose, with the way HR teams are looking at that commodity of people, which is absolute gold dust.
Yeah.
You're not sending them down to a debt route. I don't know. I think it's an easier decision.
WageStream will tell you that theirs is accessible
Yeah.
and stuff. We have found a lot of employers who are very uncomfortable, and in my opinion, rightly so, at signposting towards an app that has debt processing and sort of giving it the stamp of approval.
Yeah.
A lot of employers are very uncomfortable with that. And so we've sort of built a brand around just going nowhere near that. I always say to people, I'm happy to write in the contract, but to be honest, we built our whole brand.
I mean, so I'm just sitting there thinking of 3 or 4 people directors I know very well, and all of them they just wouldn't do it. It's just not worth it for them in terms of, it sounds really selfish, but actually reputationally and integrity wise, sometimes it's just be careful especially I think when you're dealing with people or wages, you have to, that's why I say when we're recommending in a workforce management scheduling tool or whatever, when we look at payroll, we're like, please, just be careful, make the right decision. This is people's pay. You only get one chance to make a mistake and they won't forget. It's very interesting because I always like to kind of put a comparison out there. So
yeah, and to be clear, they are sort of the iPod, the industry. They
100%.
An awful lot of rebuilding, a very big brand. And yeah, you're absolutely right. Actually, on data.
As Peter Briffett, I think it was the guy I knew. Is he still there? Okay. But no. And so if a GM or a people director or someone in some kind of decision-making role is looking to kind of move forward with this or understand a bit more, what's the best way for them to what's the first steps you would take in this kind of situation?
Yeah, I would say, look, have a chat with us, and there's a few key bits of information we need to know. Sort of what systems do you use, sort of what type of staff and what your pay cycles. But to be honest, we are agnostic to all of them. Like I said, the best thing is I'm aware that this is a very niche area within a niche area. I live and breathe this all day, right? But most people don't. And so just have a chat, no strings attached. We sort of know the legislation in detail. I'm really bored on this, but we are.
He's all right, laugh. You go for a beer with him.
We are super at the weeds. Bear in mind that, HR tech stacks is a pretty niche area. We're a niche of that, right? So I just say, look, have a chat, and we will talk you through. We'll explain sort of the code of conduct, what the FCA think of it, what providers, and really unbiased, what providers there are all out there, why we think we're better on these metrics, and then what we need to do to launch this. Like I said, launch with this. It doesn't matter what payroll or what workforce management systems you use. It's weeks, not months. It really is a sort of cherry on top. We are not talking about replacing payroll here.
Yeah, very cool. Look, love it. And what's next for Level? I'm calling you Level because you've got your branded shirt on there. What's coming up for you guys?
Yeah, we've got a few things in the pipeline. Trying to think, not a lot I can actually talk about, but
it's always the way.
Hopefully, ask me in a month's time. Things. I think the most exciting thing relatively recently, it's we are partnering with the world's largest on-demand pay company, a company called Daily Pay, who sort of invented this technology, based out of the US, sort of multi-billion-dollar corporation. They wanted to come to the UK, but obviously it's very different to America. So they looked at all the providers, and sort of as a source of pride for us, they decided to partner with us.
Wow.
These guys can DD an on-demand pay company. They are the on-demand pay company, so they know if there's any skeletons where they're buried. And very, very proud they sort of chose to work with us. And so we are also working on rolling out their UK product as well through our platform. So we increasingly are not only selling our own on-demand pay platform, we are powering other on-demand pay platforms. So there is other...
Almost like the middleware for on-demand pay,
exactly.
right?
So most people want to come to us direct, but some workforce management companies in particular, they want their own on-demand pay service within their own app so that users
of course,
bounce out to another app. We are increasingly also partnering and powering those. So that's an exciting avenue, but to be honest, we're still laser focused on, that's the future right now. If you want this, in the next year or two, truthfully, it's going to be coming to a provider like ourselves direct, and then let us worry about all that fancy partnership stuff in the future where we think the industry's going. But for right now, you just want to partner with someone who's done this for years, has good references, and, can talk to you about the nuances of it. Really.
Perfect. That's why you're an improved partner, my friend. And what's the best way to get hold of you, apart from finding you on the marketplace for Tech on Toast? Where else can we find you?
Yeah, Tech on Toast, search Level FT. We should come up on Level On-Demand Pay. And my email, aah@levelft.com, or I'll be on LinkedIn, and I'll happily put you the
where most of us are. I mean, it's the best. It is the best app in it for just hanging out and meeting people.
AI, sort of, I'm getting increasingly frustrated with the, I went on holiday to Spain, and I left my baby in a shop. This is what it taught me about certain.
We've got to get creative, man. It's getting difficult. It's getting difficult. I'll look for that post. Look, thank you very much. That was Archie, everybody. You can check out Level FT on the website, as I said, on tackletose.community, or you can go and find him on LinkedIn, where he spends most of his time. What was your email again?
AAH.
It's easy. AAH. Lovely. All right, great. Thanks very much, guys, and we'll see you all next week.
You, mate.
Thanks.